Hi, I'm Sadie Starmer, and this story is about my son Myles. I found out I was pregnant with Myles on February 11th, 2012. I had a really regular pregnancy with Myles, and all of his ultrasounds were great, his heart rate was great, he was growing great. About 3 weeks before, I was at work and I started to go into labor. And my contractions started getting really heavy, really strong, and then they stopped, completely stopped. I did that every day for 3 weeks. My due date came, and then I went to the doctor and I said, I don't want to be induced. It was October 15th, and I said, I don't want to be induced. I don't like to be induced. Can we just make sure he's okay? And we will just wait for me to go into labor. My doctor agreed, and he said, we'll do an ultrasound and we'll do a stress test, and if it all looks good, we'll just let you keep going. So I went in and we did the stress test, and it was perfect. He was moving, he was perfect, heart rate wasn't dropping. So then we went into the ultrasound. The ultrasound tech did my ultrasound, and she said, I need you to wait here. I have to go get your doctor. So my doctor came in and he said, Sadie, we have to get him out today. He said his kidneys are too large and his bladder's too large, and he doesn't have any amniotic fluid. So my doctor got a hold of the Iowa City team, and within the hour, Myles was here. So my doctor scheduled an ultrasound the next morning to see what was going on, why his kidneys and his bladder were too big. We got into the NICU, and of course all these doctors started coming in just everywhere. The room was so small, and there were just doctors everywhere and asking me what was going on, what I knew, what I didn't know, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I just know my son was born and something isn't right. So they started doing blood tests, and the first night his oxygen got too low, and I couldn't hold Myles for 2 days when he was there. And his oxygen got too low, and they put him on oxygen, and he just cried and cried, and I couldn't do anything to help him. So I had to leave the room, and I spent the night on a couch because I couldn't take my baby crying at me not being able to help him. So the next morning they came in and they said, your son was born with a condition called posterior urethral valve. And basically what it is it's just a membrane outside of a bladder. It only happens in 1 in 8,000 boys, and it only happens in boys. And they said that they have to be able to remove that in order for things to get better. But they said, we don't expect it to get much better. They kept telling me dialysis and kidney transplant, and that they just didn't have a very good prognosis for him, and they didn't think he would do very good. My mom brought Car up to me, and Sandy came with her, and they brought Maya because I hadn't been able to see her, and Maya wanted to spend the night with me. And I said, yeah, that's fine. I'll come home tomorrow, refresh myself, get some new clothes. So I left the hospital very upset because I couldn't take my son with me. And I took his blankets with me so that I could wash them. I got in the car with Maya, and Maya fell asleep right away. And I got out of Iowa City, and my mom had left a Christian station on. And the whole time I was pregnant with Myles, I wasn't close to God whatsoever. I didn't know. I was doubtful. A lot had happened to me in my childhood, and it was very rough for me. I had started going to church right before Myles was born, but I was still doubtful. And my mom left the Christian radio station on, and the first song that I heard was Casting Crowns, Praise You in This Storm. And Myles' blanket was sitting in the seat, and I could smell his baby's smell. And at that point, I knew he was going to be okay. I knew God was telling me he's healed. There's nothing, he's healed. That next morning, bright and early, his doctor's team called me and said, we're getting Myles in for surgery tomorrow. Everything went fantastic. He came out great. So we spent the next week in the hospital, them just making sure everything was going good. They released him from the hospital, and they gave me, I think he was on 3 different medications. And they said that he's going to have to be on antibiotics for the first year of his life because we're worried about infections. And he took it for a month, and then he was supposed to graduate to a new one, but I couldn't get a hold of the hospital, and then he didn't have any infections. So I just kept going, I just kept him off of it, and we would go back every 6 months, and he would be looking great. His bladder was getting less dilation in it, the thickness of the walls were less, his kidneys were looking better. And then by the time, this last time that we went in June, his doctor said that his kidneys are the correct size for his age now. He has grown into them. His bladder is correct. He asked if he was potty trained, and I said no, not yet, but we're kind of working on it, just going slow. He said, don't get frustrated if during the night doesn't go very fast. And not 2 weeks later, he was getting up in the morning completely dry. His kidneys are working. There was so much doubt for me through this whole thing. And then for Myles to be born, and I don't know what's going on, where he is, it was very frustrating. But in all of that, I've found that God's right there. He's never left me. Even though I felt like I left him, he's never left me. And even when that doubt comes in, he reassures me, no, your baby's healed. There's nothing more to it.